Hi, and welcome to heaven. This is Julia Kibilda, and
Raquel Alves.
how are you today, Raquel, on this beautiful sunny day and our 10th episode? Woo!
Woo! I'm doing great. I am ready for this party because I'm drinking red wine from a jar.
What the fuck?
Yep, I am
You said
drinking.
sangria, but without all the other stuff.
Yeah, I said sangria just with the wine.
Wow. This is amazing. This should go on the cover of the episode, to be honest, I think.
Wait, I'll stop to then take a screenshot.
Done. Anyways, today we're gonna come to you with a very fun topic of international dating.
Hell yeah.
So, if you don't know, me and Raquel met in London, and neither of us is from London or from the UK for that matter. So, I'm Polish and you're Portuguese. And basically, this episode is about our our experiences of international dating and how different it is to date in your own language and your own country and to date abroad or with people who are also not from the UK or not from your country, basically.
Yeah. So I remember we kind of came up with this idea actually when we were filming our reality TV dating shows, because
So,
I came across this amazing, extremely bad TV show, which is called Love in Translation, where they have a bunch of women from different countries and none of them speak English. And then you have three bachelors, American, who only speak English. And the question of the whole show is, can you fall in love or make a connection if you don't speak the same language? The answer to me is no, but the show thought otherwise. Therefore, that's how it all kind of
how can
started.
you fall in love if you can't communicate at all? It's
I
kind of
think it was,
like that plot point in Love Actually with the guy that goes to the his house in France and he has like the Portuguese maid and he falls in love with her even though they can't talk shit.
oh my God, honestly, that actress is so famous here in Portugal, and everybody was raving when she appeared on Love Actually. We're like, major star in a major film, here we go. But yeah, it's pretty much that. That's what this whole show is about, is that section of Love Actually.
That's crazy. But like, how does it work? How do they talk? Do they just like mime?
Kind of. They just do whatever it takes, I guess. They kind of like try to say this or that with pointing to stuff, and it's just chaotic and is extremely cringe. However, what I found quite interesting was that they didn't know this was how it's gonna go in the show itself, but on both sides, both the American guys and all the other foreign women, they all went there to find someone from some other country to date.
Okay.
So they all went for that, and all the women were looking to date someone from America, which says a lot, I guess. And then the Americans will all look to date someone outside of America, which also says a lot on their part. Either way, I thought it was quite interesting because the women started talking a little bit about their own dating scenes back in their own home countries and
Yeah.
how different it was and how they felt like they could had a better experience out there. And because of that, we just kind of start talking about our own experiences with each other. And we're like, perhaps we should make an episode about this. Because as you said, we both lived abroad in a very cosmopolitan city and we dated many people and none of them were our nationality. So that's interesting to talk about, I think.
I mean, yeah, and to be honest, like I relate a lot to the women on the shows with her because I never dated when I was in Poland. I mean, part of that was probably because I was still like growing up and I was a teenager, so I just wasn't really mentally ready to
Yeah.
really. But I also didn't find anyone that I would want to date. I don't know. I feel like my personality also has evolved so much since I moved to London, so maybe that was like a big factor of it. But even now, I don't really I would find it really weird to date someone from Poland. I don't know what it is, but I just feel like it's the mentality of people and kind of all the like cultural background that comes with it that I'm very aware of because I'm also Polish and I just wouldn't like date someone like that. Also, it might be because a lot of men in Poland are just misogynist. So so maybe that's it, you know, maybe like subconsciously I was like, maybe not. But
Yeah.
it's not like London was much better for me, to be honest.
Yeah, I think we all are. I mean, everyone who lives in the city, I think, is quite used to this more global experience. Like, it's so much more common now to live around other people from different countries, even if they're not the ones you live in. Even being in my home country, like compared to like 10 years ago, there's way more people from different countries in my own country, and therefore you get more used to be with other people and have this more globalized experience, I would say, because I moved, like I lived abroad, so of course that was going to happen to me. But even some friends of mine who stayed in Lisbon also had a couple of experiences dating foreigners, almost half between the Portuguese, so the natives and foreigners, which I thought was also quite interesting. And I have to say that we, all of us, the as girls, we all have the same opinion about Portuguese guys. And if you're a Portuguese guy and listen to this, I'm so sorry, but they're way too shy. Like they're way too shy. They don't take initiatives. They don't
Oh
know how
my
to make a
God.
decision. Like
I
I
remember. I'll never forget when I was flying for the first time to see you in Portugal, and I was flying from Poland, and I sat next to this. I was sitting in the plane next to this Portuguese guy, and he helped put my suitcase up. And then the whole flight, he tried to make a move on me, but he never did. And he was just like make random small talk that was really bad, and then lingering around me when we landed at the airport, kind of, being in like the proximity of me the whole time and just looking around or dropping me a smile. And I was like, just
just say something, just
either
do
do
something.
something or don't. I don't know. Just decide what you want.
Literally, like my longest situationship was with a Portuguese guy because like it was never a yes, but it was also never a no. And I was like, can we, what is going on? Like, I don't know.
I don't understand.
And then I just left the country, and I guess it was a no because nothing came out of it in the end of the day.
Well,
And I think that was like the biggest difference than dating in London in comparison to dating in my home country. I think people were much more decisive and took way more initiative. I think it was just overall more exciting. And that was, I guess, another point that when you're dating abroad, your nationality kind of becomes your dating persona and it becomes your way of breaking the ice as well.
yeah, I feel like it becomes a big part of like it almost becomes like your personality, and you're kind of like it's a very good starting point to be different because it gives you that edge and that thing to talk about because you can always talk about your language or talk about your food, talk about how it is in your home country, and it almost kind of becomes your entire personality at the very start of dating. Because to me, like let's be honest, the very beginnings of dating are pretty much similar with everyone. You're like, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite food? You have nothing, you don't know anything about each other. So unless you find a lot of similarities very early on, it's you're just trying to fill it out and see what happens. And I really found that in London, like a lot of the guys that I dated, they found me being Polish exciting. And I also dated a guy who was very into Slavic girls and
Yeah.
just really obsessed with Slavic culture. And after me, he dated a Czech girl who was his best friend. But anyways,
Anyway, let's not talk about that.
anyway, yeah, so I found it kind of weird. And then I remember I briefly went out with this Polish guy when I was already in London. And at first I was really kind of stressed out before I met him. And I was like, oh, it's not special anymore. I'm not bringing anything besides like my actual personality into it because he's also Polish. We literally have like the exact same background. So I was like, I can only rely on myself and my sense of humor and all that. I cannot rely on being Polish because he is also Polish, so he does not give a shit.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, that's very interesting because I did have that a bit even dating my current partner as well. We've been in a relationship for a few years now, and I still have a bit, perhaps we could even call that imposter syndrome almost, that of, oh, would he find me interesting if I wasn't foreigner to him? And I do have that question sometimes. I mean, I shouldn't question that. It's been a few years now, but I still sometimes ask myself, like, would I be that interesting to others if I wasn't foreigner? And how much does that play in my personality, really? Or more like, did I also assume it more as my personality because that was my X factor in a sense, you know?
Yeah, that's true. And also, obviously it also goes much wider. We're not as affected by it as some other nationalities because there's a lot of fetishization of multiple, nationalities, as for example, like Asian or Black. And that's really scary to me that you kind of have to think about that when you're dating and be like, is this person liking me for me, or am I a
Mhm.
fetish? Am I a concept to them because I'm a representative of a certain culture or of a certain race that is exhibiting certain, visual features and etc. etc. And yeah, that obviously goes into a wider discussion. I think like for me, a very big part of like dating in London in general and dating foreign people has been dating in English. So like the language aspect of it. Because I feel like English is so much more casual than Polish is as a language. And so for me, dating in English and flirting in English is so much easier. If I think about flirting in Polish, it's just so cringe.
Yeah,
Like
same.
the thought of it just makes me want to,
Same. Even when I was trying to prepare myself for this episode, I was even thinking that is English kind of becoming a bit of the international language of dating? Because dating people from different nationalities is becoming more and more of the norm, and you don't need to be an English native speaker yourself because we are both speaking in English, and none of us is, right? And all our relationships, the guy that I'm dating, he's not English either, and we speak in English together. And I often think about that, how it is so much easier for me to perhaps flirt or having this more love language, let's say in English, also because I grew up with so much American and perhaps a bit of a British media when I was growing up. So I'm not gonna lie that a lot of ways of expressing myself are literal copies of movies and TV series that I watch. I don't have the same references that I have in Portuguese. And perhaps because I am, in a way, copying these ways of being or these ways of saying certain words or feelings or expressions in English, and I wouldn't be able to say in Portuguese, it actually makes it easier because it's not as intimate, perhaps.
yeah.
I think it's easier for me to say I love you in English than it is to say I love you in Portuguese, because to me it's going to feel it way more. And I don't think I have that depth of emotion speaking in English, even though it's my main way of expressing love because my partner does not understand me any other way.
Yeah, no, I really get that. I think I related it a lot. I find that the intensity of Polish for me is much higher. And as you said, the weight of words is also very different in those languages. And I do think a lot of it comes from like the commodification of English and mass media and social media and memes, films, songs, etc., etc. Because we are so used to, like, rom-coms and all of that are predominantly in English, that kind of becomes super natural and super normal to, call someone baby or honey or darling. It's almost like, even in the UK, I feel like it's also funny because people just address themselves as love or darling just casually, just a random person, a stranger. So I feel like that very thing about language makes it the distance between you and the other person so much smaller than it is in Poland, because you wouldn't call anyone darling in Poland unless that was like your actual partner or family member or someone like that, someone that's very close to you. And I feel
Yeah.
like the way that English is way more casual in general as a language, and it's way less formal because you address everyone as you. You don't have like the formal
Yeah, yeah.
speech. You don't go around calling like strangers in a coffee shop like sir or ma'am most of the time, especially when they're your age. I feel like that makes it very, very easy as well to form quicker connections with people as well. And same with sex talk, I think is way more normalized. So it's easier.
Yeah, I'm even thinking that perhaps one of the reasons why as well hookup culture is such a thing, perhaps it's also because of that, that hookup culture exists more again in cities like London, where you have a lot of people from all over the world dating one another in the city. And perhaps, yeah, the way we speak to one another is never that deep, it's always so casual. And that said, commodification of English, especially for a foreigner, literally does not have the same intensity, the same meaning almost to someone else who actually speaks English. And I don't know, I think it would be interesting to have a perspective on someone who's actually a native English speaker on this. But it makes me sometimes a bit sad that I actually am not able to express my love for someone in my own language, because it would be so different to me as well. Like I would love to do that. And I don't think I'm able to do actually, to fully express my feelings in my own language, because it does have such a difference.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that actually, because what I found very intimate in dating in general is teaching the person that you're dating words in your native language.
Mm-hmm.
So I found that very nice and very sweet when someone tries to learn some simple words from you and, you know, expresses that interest in your own culture and language. Even though I've never been like crazy about being Polish, you know, I'm not super associated with my culture and all of that, but obviously it's a massive part of my life. And so I always find it very sweet when I would, you know, teach people how to say, I don't know, how is a toothbrush in Polish, or how is nose or your mouth, or how is a kiss in Polish, or good morning or good night. And when like, you know, the person that I'm dating would remember that and say that to me in my own language and vice versa. I just find it very intimate and nice and a sign of care and respect to my own culture as well, which I think is very sweet. So yeah, I definitely agree that it's nice to be able to express your emotions in your native language to the person that you love, even in that very simple way, for a few words that you
Yeah,
can
yeah.
they can understand. But for me, dating in London is also very specific. I feel like London in itself is a very specific environment to date in because it's very transient. It's very multicultural, even more so than other big cities in the world. And I feel like because of that, it's also much more fast paced. And, you know, you meet someone and then the next few months you find out that you're leaving the country and going to live somewhere else. And you kind of form those very, very brief but strong connections with a lot of people. That was my experience, at least. And in a sense, a lot of people who do move to London, they kind of want to experience that as well. Specifically, they're not looking for long-term relationships because they would rather, you know, date someone from Spain and then date someone from Norway and then date someone from China and then date someone from there and just, you know, dip in all the cultures, so to speak.
Yeah, I honestly feel that from my experience, to be honest, dating in London, which was rather brief, but I still got to but I still got to experience different types of people as well, and from different countries. I enjoyed in general much more dating people who are immigrants just like me than, for example, people who are English. And I think
Hmm.
that was actually very interesting to me, because when I was preparing for this episode, I saw a lot of people doing their own accounts of international dating, and it's always usually an English speaker, either American, British, Australian, with someone else, with the other, which is us. And I was like, I actually had a much better experience as the other, dating others, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, like for example, I went out in a couple of dates with this very nice girl, and she was from Malaysia, which is a way more different country culturally from mine than from me with England. And I remember going on a date with another girl who was from England. So in a way, I would find it way more different or culturally different, the girl from Malaysia. But actually, the fact that we are both immigrants in the same country, that one experience actually makes us bond way more. And I had way more fun and way better conversations with her than I had with the girl from England, actually. And it's not even that deep. Like sometimes I would speak with, I don't know, stuff less slightly more political, but it's never that deep even. And I had way better conversations with the girl from Malaysia than I had from the girl who was from England. And I think the reason for it, that even though she was in London, it is her home country. She does not have a perspective from anything else. To her, this is like the normality, and I am the other to her. While to the girl in Malaysia, she felt as the other as much as I did being in that place. And that shared experience is actually what bonded us together. I think that's also why we are also friends in a sense. especially at uni, like most of the, especially in the first year, like most of the people who are not English are the ones who end up bonding first, and only after second, third year we start like mixing up a bit more with everyone else who was British, for example.
Yeah, that's very true because you have that common ground of, being an immigrant and being a foreign person in a different country. And even though your experiences might be wildly different, that's still kind of like a common point between you.
Yeah,
And it's actually very interesting that you say that because in contrary, I dated a lot of British people or
right.
people from like Ireland, Wales, UK. And so
Yeah, all
um,
British
so
UK.
mostly British people. And I really resonate with that idea of being the foreign person to them because I feel like that's kind of how I was perceived a lot of times. And I feel like very often that initial attraction from them was motivated by my appearance and by that fact that I was foreign and I was not from the UK. And also most of them were men and a lot of them, I mean, all of them were men actually. And they kind of took this persona of an educator, that they would
Right.
educate me about the British culture, or, they would make fun of me if I said something with a weird accent in English or something like that. Obviously, it wasn't a flirty way of like, ah, ha, ha, oh, that's so funny how you said that, or like, oh, you don't know what is this random weird slang British word? How am I supposed to know that? But it was kind of like their way of trying to, make themselves interesting in a way because they didn't have that edge of being foreign, I think.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't really know what to think about it because obviously some of those experiences were fairly, I mean, none of them worked out. Some of them still were fairly good experiences. But I do think that in the back of my head, I always felt, oh, yeah, what if they're only like seeing me because I'm not from here? And I also felt like they would never understand me the way someone who's also from abroad or who's from my country would,
Exactly.
in a
Yeah,
sense.
yeah. That's totally how I feel. And I generally think from experiences like yours, as you are the other to them. But I get it's just a question of perspective, right? There are others to you, but
Yeah.
anyway. I feel there is a difference, definitely a big difference between dating as an English speaker, someone who's non-English, or two non-English speakers dating together. And I feel like it can actually create some imbalances in a possible relationship, speaking their mother tongue, and the other one is actually the one doing the effort. Like, as much as I am very good in my English, I think one of the main things that can like disrupt this connection is definitely like communication, and definitely communication during arguments
Yeah.
is like one of the worst things ever, because is when your emotions are way more irrational, and those sayings in your mother tongue when they come out and you cannot fully express, again, it's a highly emotional moment, so you cannot fully express rationally in a second language, and it can be very frustrating. I can tell you of arguments I had in the past. It can be extremely frustrating because you aren't able to fully express yourself in the way that you want, and then you might be misunderstood, and that just furthers on the
Yeah.
argument, which is honestly the worst. And there is this like specific scene actually from Modern Family that always stays with me, which is from Sofia Vergara's character Gloria, who plays a Colombian living in America, right, married to an American. And she says, "Do you know how smart I am in Spanish?"
Yeah.
And this thing always really stuck to me. And I am someone, again, who does not struggle speaking in English, but one of the things that I hated the most when I first came to this country is people questioning my intelligence
Yeah.
because of the love English. Like, you can call me ugly, you can call me anything, but call me dumb, knife. Like, I'll stab you. Like, no way you're gonna call me dumb.
Especially that, like, coming from them who mostly speak only their native tongue, like, we're obviously already in a higher position than you because we've already made the effort to move to a different country and learn a completely different language to be able to fully live in it, to work in it, to date in it, to communicate in it. You just cannot compare. And I totally get what you mean because, like, when I get upset, I swear in Polish. So whenever I'm really, really, really upset, the first thing that comes to mind is just Polish. I won't even think about English. And so being able to express that to someone is just really, really frustrating. And yeah, um,
Uh, So I've also seen, as I'm researching, some articles and studies on how cross-cultural relationships are kind of better than
Oh, that's
the other way around.
interesting.
Yeah, so these studies report a higher relationship satisfaction to those people who date their own nationalities.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, especially if it's bilingual or even more languages. So if, for example, as we were saying, the two of them are not English speakers, but they use English as like the common language to speak with one another, they actually report to be happier because guess what? They actually have to make an effort in their communication and an effort to understand one another. And I was like, something so simple that could help any couple out there, really.
That's crazy. That's so interesting. Yeah, I feel like it's also way more interesting because you get to learn about one another way more because you always have the other person's language and culture to learn about. And I think that in itself shows effort and commitment to the person in a sense.
Yeah, I think it's be quite cool to take that as a reference, especially the thing of making the effort to understand one another, because sometimes it's not even just like a straight-on language barrier, but more like a way of being that is obviously different than yours because it comes from a different cultural background.
Yeah.
So obviously the way I act and even the way I speak English is very different to yours because we have different cultural backgrounds. Therefore, even the way I express myself is not the same, or the ways I act, I don't know, on a table is different to the other person. So you need to make an effort to understand the other with that cultural difference, but it actually can help you in a much deeper way of the relationship, of like actually understanding one another and their own personalities.
Yeah, that's very true. That's really interesting. And I think also it ties with something that I wanted to say that I feel like international couples are quite interesting to others as well. Like I've seen a lot of Instagram accounts that are kind of, and like TikTok accounts of couples that are kind of based purely on the idea that the couple is international and they're just learning about each other and learning about their languages. And that's like the whole concept of the account itself. And people eat that shit up. They're like, oh, your boyfriend learned your language for you or moved to your country for you. That's so cute and so sweet. Yeah, I feel like I don't know, it's always been something in like books and films and culture that has been kind of glorified and you know, it's one thing to like be in a couple and that also in itself in pop culture is a very highly good thing, like on a pedestal. And it's almost a next level to be in like a
Yeah.
international couple, you know?
Yeah, and honestly, I kind of agree it's the next level because yeah, it takes that extra step in order to make it work, really.
Yeah, exactly. Because I always think, for example, about it, what if I meet someone and I want to introduce them to my parents, for instance? My parents don't live in this country, and yeah, they live 2 hours away. But what if my partner is from a different continent and his parents live like 12 hours of a plane flight away, you know? That in itself even would be way bigger of an effort and way more of an important thing and commitment to someone than, you know, meeting someone's parents when you live in the same city. And
Yeah, yeah,
things like
yeah.
that. And, you know, or visiting your culture to visiting your country to learn about your heritage and, you know, where you come from and your hometown and things like that. I think those things are really, really important. And they really make a person, they make who you are. And allowing your partner to learn about that is way more harder when you are an international couple and it kind of brings you way closer together than if you were, you know, from the same town. So basically you share all of those same childhood
Yeah.
references and things that made you. So you kind of lose that extra level of connection in a sense.
Yeah, and I also think another part is that people also become and are way more cultured, I would
Mhm.
say. And sometimes people can get very lost in relationships and losing a sense of self. And perhaps the fact that you are from different countries, it means that we have a world of our own that you never touched or you never part of. And I think that is also something very intriguing and interesting to go and explore. And it also makes you more of your own person with a life before more clearly.
Yeah.
Like, of course, this is not just true from people who are dating internationally, but I think it just makes that difference and more that individualism more clear
Yeah.
in a cross-cultural relationship for sure. Because I have my whole life and my whole identity as a Portuguese, which at the time I didn't even consider that. It's only when I went abroad that I gained that conscious of a different cultural identity
Yeah.
that then brought up and became like more interesting to people. I would say, in contrast, as much as this is a benefit, I also would like to point out that I don't know how I feel about people who go specifically to other countries to just date someone from that said country or to date
Yeah.
years with, I mean, like, what I mean is that, like, you're moving abroad with the intention to date someone abroad
From
because that,
that specific country. Yeah.
yeah, because that's cool or trendy, or you're just, and
Fetishizing that specific culture. Yeah. That
yeah, yeah. Because when I compare that to us, for example, us is more like we moved to this country to study first and then eventually started to work and start a career. That's why we moved to this country. And dating people who are foreigner to us is more of a consequence of our situation
yeah,
instead
yeah,
of like our motivation. And I'm pretty sure you felt it, like
yeah.
that difference of people you dated in the past, the ones who were dating you because, oh my God, she's Slavic. I mean, that's sexy, right? Let me go. To the ones who just naturally gravitate towards you and you're like, oh, but oh, and you are Polish. Well, that's interesting too. That's the difference. And I really wanted to point that out. I think that's called expat dating or something like that. I don't think it's as common anymore. Now we have all the passport bros going to Asian countries to find themselves some Asian submissive wives, but that's a whole different
That's disgusting.
concept. But I think what we want to really talk about is more this slightly more natural way of how people gravitate
Yeah, but
towards
I've actually seen a lot of articles about that, to be honest. The idea of moving to a different country to find love. I've seen a lot of articles in women's magazines like Vogue and shit like that. Of, oh, yeah, this writer admits that, she left the US or she left the UK to move to, a Central European country to find love because the pace of life in America or the men in America are not as they used to be, or they're not the same as in other countries. So they would just move to, meet someone from someplace else. And to an extent, like I don't really know how to feel about it because in one point I agree because maybe that's how I would feel if I stayed in Poland and maybe I would like to move just to fulfill that part of my life. But
the thing to me though is that in those articles it's always a American man or American woman or a British man, British woman going to Latin countries, going to Asian countries, which are usually like third world countries. And to me, again, talking about that imbalance in a relationship, because you're not going to go speak Spanish to them.
yeah.
So, because that would be different. If you went and you have to go learn the language, if you went to fucking Japan because you want to find a Japanese person to date, because that's your thing, I guess, and you're not going to go learn Japanese, you expect people to speak your language. And to me, that's a completely different, I don't know, it's a completely different ambience, a completely different
Yeah,
vibe.
yeah,
And I think that's why it ends up bothering me because you're putting yourself in a slightly superior position. And sometimes you also take advantage of the other people by being American, therefore, with like the American propaganda on others. Like, oh, that's so much better. They have more money, la 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 la. And there's like way other factors to it, I would say, and dangers for other people that sometimes are not very aware of. And I do, yeah, I mean, I might be sounding like an hypocrite because I started the episode saying that I cannot date Portuguese men, but
yeah.
also I never really explored that fully. So what I'm saying is, as a teenager, I couldn't. Perhaps as an adult now, I would be able. I don't know. But I wouldn't. When I moved, I didn't move with the idea like, oh, I cannot date Portuguese men.
I'm moving to
Like,
date. You moved to live your life, so that's completely different. Dating is just a part of it.
yeah, and I think it's more after dating other people is when I realized that I don't think I could date a Portuguese man because in general, I'm not saying I wouldn't find someone like that, but in general, I got better experiences afterwards. But I only realized that afterwards. I didn't start from the beginning thinking,
Yeah, you
yeah,
realize that like upon perspective and then gaining that
exactly.
different experience rather than like thinking of it in the first place and kind of, aiming for that different experience from the start. I feel like that's a very different context to it.
Yeah,
Um,
because to those, I just feel like saying perhaps the problem is you. Because how
Many
can you
people in
think
your own country can just clearly see through you, you know? And that's
exactly?
why to explore others.
Yeah, if you go to someone who doesn't speak as well English, perhaps you can like pass through some like red flags. I don't know.
No, that's very true though. And yeah, kind of problematic as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, I think in general, it's just really interesting to date people from other countries and cultures and learn about them.
I think it definitely leads to like maybe slightly more interesting dynamics. And I also felt I learned more about myself as well through dating people from different countries. Because not only I got to learn about others, but learning about others made me learn about me and who I am and also what I like and prefer when dating. I think that's quite interesting. And perhaps the fact that it's like a different nationality is a more clear differentiator that makes you realize things more clearly. I don't know. It's definitely becoming more of the norm, dating different people, like different nationalities and different cultures. Intrigued to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, we shall see in a few years. But overall, I think it is really nice, you know, and I think it kind of expands boundaries. Like I know for my grandparents, for example, my siblings live abroad and their partners are both from abroad. They don't speak Polish, our language. And for example, for people of the generation of my grandparents and even some people's in parents in our age, that's a very difficult thing to grasp and overcome because you know you cannot understand your child's partner, you cannot communicate with them, and for a lot of people in those generations that would be something unacceptable. How can you date someone from a different culture? And I think it's really nice that the world is expanding in that way and that we're kind of clearing those geographical boundaries through love and through dating, which sounds so cheesy, but I think it's true. And hopefully it will, you know, lead to good and love conquers all and all that.
Love conquers all. Hell yeah. Uh,
On
look at
that
us.
note,
Look how positive we are. I've what was the last episode we were so positive in? Like I
I
do
don't
not remember.
know. You know, the sun is shining through my window. It is the long bank holiday weekend, so I am all for the good, loving vibes here, supporting happy inter national relationships all the way.
Yes. I mean, we're also in spring, so love is sparkling. Everyone is happier. Go love one another in every language possible. Have fun.
Exactly. And on that note, we wish you a happy weekend and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.